Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Praveen. I lead sales at SecPod. I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's session on closing the window of risk, endpoint, and cloud remediation simplified session. Joining me today is Dominic, Global
Hi.
Practice Head, Cloud and Infrastructure Services at Inspira Enterprises, who brings deep experience in helping enterprises modernize security and cloud operation at scale. Thank you, Dominic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Praveen, and
Yeah.
delighted to be part of this webinar.
Thank you. So together we'll unpack one of the biggest challenges in organizations today, right? That's the widening window of risk between detection and remediation, and how prevention first approach can help you close it across both endpoints and cloud environments. So here's the agenda, and we'll start with the state of cyber risk today, right? Setting the context for today's threat landscape, and we'll discuss about why traditional security falls apart, understanding the systemic gaps in current models, the cost of risk, what the delayed remediation actually means for businesses today, shifting the model to close the window of risk, right? Adopting a prevention first mindset. We'll talk about our unified endpoint and cloud defense platform at SecPod. And finally, we'll open for questions and answers. So let's dive in. The state of cyber threats today, right? Let's start by grounding ourselves in the reality of today's threat landscape. The gap between detection and remediation has become the attacker's sweet spot today, right? The average mean time to remediate, or MTDR, is 60 days right now. That's how long an enterprise take to remediate a vulnerability once it is exposed, right? That's 2 full months of open exposure for adversaries to exploit. What's even more concerning is that 60 percentage of data breaches, right? They don't come from unknown or 0-day flaws. They come from vulnerabilities that we already know about and we have not patched, right? That's the biggest challenge in today's enterprise. The other context I want to bring in is it's not just the CVEs anymore. The traditional scanners look for just CVEs that are patchable. Nearly 30% of modern cyber attacks, right, they stem from non-CV vulnerabilities. That's the biggest blind spot in today's enterprise. That's your configuration drifts, right, across your enterprise compute to your cloud configurations, privilege escalations, excessive permissions to a user's applications or services, mismanaged assets, right? Things like these are traditional scanners typically ignore. That's the problem right now. So the challenge is clear. The attack surface is expanding faster than our ability to discover and secure our assets. Detection takes time, remediation takes even longer. Every delay widens the window of risk, right? So the question right now we need to ask ourselves is, how do we close the window before an attacker steps through it? That's a challenge right now. Now, Dominic, why do you think traditional security falls short? What is that you're seeing in the industry today?
See, when you talk about security, security itself can come into different categories, and we have to
Mm,
understand where exactly we have to plug in those gaps for those different segments which are constituting the security
yeah,
landscape of the customers. Okay,
yeah.
now as you rightly touched upon the point in terms of cyber risk is at large because of the current way things are. Everything is connected, and it's more vulnerable if you're not plugging in those gaps.
Mm,
What kind of gaps are we talking about here? We're talking about gaps where the endpoints, those different elements in part of the security landscape, needs to
mm,
be first detected in terms of configuration mismatch, in terms of low patches, because
mm,
patches keep updating day in and day out. And how frequently can we do this? Okay, that's important. You need to have a kind of a mechanism which helps us to identify it faster. But
mm,
once you identify, remediate it also equally in the same aspect is very critical. And
yeah.
that's where traditional security actually falls short, because identification of those and then getting those remediations rectified or
Mm,
corrected takes a lot of time,
mm,
and that's vulnerable.
mm,
So that's where you need to have an intelligent system to identify it as well as then
mm,
get it remediated.
mm.
So that's where I see this to
Yeah.
be, a concern, and we need to have solutions to plug in these gaps, because that's a lot of loss from a business standpoint if you are not able to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Right. So now that we know the traditional security falls short, right? Dominic, what's your view of cost of risk, right? Now we need to quantify this. Uh, that's pretty difficult, but how do you see this?
See, if you see, as I said, identifying a gap, okay,
Mm,
that could be because of mismanaged configurations, or it could
mm,
be because of the patches which are, low. And then suddenly there is a bug, an attacker comes in, penetrates into your system to that
mm,
bug, then that's
mm,
that's it. So
mm,
we've been servicing customers. I can give you references where we've been working with BFSI customers, and
mm,
for them, we have to have a cycle of every month to
mm,
carry out a kind of a compliance or a governance for the current
mm,
set of assets. And if you increase these assets, the
mm,
endpoint assets, it
mm.
becomes a mundane task, and it practically becomes impossible to do the governance of the
Yeah.
patch or the
Yeah.
misconfiguration assessments on a regular task, a regular period. But that's
Mm,
how it is, because they are complied to certain audits,
mm,
and they have to get those compliances cleared. So if you see from a BFSI standpoint, a financial institution
mm,
standpoint, it is huge.
mm.
Now, even if you go to an enterprise, manufacturing site, okay, where there is supply chain mechanisms, there also now things are getting very important. First, we never used to find so much of expectations from the customer in terms of manufacturing segments, but yes, now it is. And with industry 4.0 coming in, obviously
Yeah.
it is more important.
Yeah.
Okay, because everything is connected. Connectivity is the key, and
Mm,
and you have a lot of emphasis on security aspects. So the cost
mm.
is huge. You can't
Yes.
quantify it in terms of
Yes.
numbers here. It depends on the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, Dominic. So thanks for that, Dominic. That really sets the core questions right now. How do we close the window of risk? Right. So now we know that the traditional security falls short. Now, how do we close this from detection to response? So the answer lies in shifting our mindset, right? Mindset from being reactive to becoming preventive. For years, I think you would agree, and everyone who's joined us today would agree that for years, cybersecurity has been about responding after something goes wrong, right? We detect, we investigate, then we try to remediate, right? But often after a breach or after a disruption has already occurred. Now, even today in our discussions, how many times we've heard a lot of CISOs talk about, I want to detect an attack faster, right? Give me platforms that help me respond to an attack, help me recover from an attack, right? But often they talk about, how do I really prevent an attack? Right? A lot of conversations we hear where enterprises confuse between blocking an attack to making sure the attack never happens. We speak
Correct.
about being breach ready, right? Building a resilience enterprise after I'm breached. But we also need to look at, how do I build a reactive model? So in a reactive model, what we're talking about is teams are not uh, in a reactive model, teams are often in a firefight mode, right? Chasing alerts, switching between disconnected tools, managing endless manual workflows. So that's what we're talking about, a reactive model. A prevention first model, on the other hand, it completely changes the equation, right? Instead of responding after an exploitation, it anticipates and mitigates risk before they're exploited. Instead of working with disconnected endpoints and cloud tools, it provides a unified visibility across the entire digital estate. And instead of manual ticket-driven workflows for remediation, right, it enables an automated, intelligent remediation, Dominic, that you spoke about, right? So you can fix issues faster than attackers can find them. Now, when our patch cycles are month and it takes 3 months, and when attackers are exploiting in minutes,
Absolutely.
right? That's the problem right now. That's the gap. Now, every enterprise, irrespective of what's happening, I'm going to wait for my monthly patch cycle, right? Okay, so that's where we are right now. Right?
In
Correct.
fact, you also need to know the prioritization of this. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
sometimes what happens is,
Yeah.
you know there is a niche, there is a patch, but then
Mm,
what is the severity and how fast you need to get it applied? That's
mm,
also important. So you need to have a kind of a solution which
mm,
not only detects it and
mm.
provides the remediation, but also categorize these remediations
Yeah.
within the time and the SLAs for that. So
You're
that's also
absolutely right. Great insight, Dominic. Again, Now every enterprise that looks at a TVM practice, right, assess for risks and vulnerabilities, they talk about volume as a problem. What
Yeah.
you said is absolutely right. It is not the volume that's the only problem, it's their inability to categorize which one is critical for them.
Correct.
The volume has always been scary, and it'll continue to be that, right? We speak
Correct.
about millions and millions of open vulnerabilities, and we get that load, right? The expectation from the SIs or service providers is to fix all of them, but that's not really needed, right? It's we need to understand categorically what is critical for that enterprise, what are getting exploited, which will have an impact to that particular BFSI or manufacturing customers, and help them plan a remediation and remediate that. Absolutely right. Right. That's exactly where things like Pod and Inspira are enabling larger enterprises, helping enterprise not just detect risk faster. That's the first step. It's also about prioritizing it, contextually prioritizing these vulnerabilities, weaknesses for an enterprise, and help them remediate at scale. Right. Yes. So that's the mindset, right? And I think we should agree right now. Prevention is the only sustainable way to reduce exposures and cost. That's the only way cybersecurity works. It's not just better. I think that's the only way it works. Otherwise, we endlessly we keep investing in technologies and stacks post breach, post attack,
Correct. Do postmortems.
postmortems. Yes. So that's where I would like to introduce SecPod's prevention framework. SecPod is built ground up in prevention-centric philosophy. And in our framework, right, we speak about continuous assessment, prioritization, and remediation, powered by automation, right? At today's scale, if your complete end-to-end cyber hygiene, if it's not continuous, if it is not automated, it doesn't work. That's the foundational philosophy of SecPod's prevention framework. So at the core of its framework is designed to help organizations move from fragmented tools, fragmented discovery tools, assessment tools, prioritization tools, remediation tools, into a platform-based approach, starting from visibility to assessment to prioritization and remediation across the enterprise IT. Dominic, that's a framework, and the platform that's built on this framework, Sena platform, it brings together discovery and normalization of infrastructure, assessment and prioritization of weaknesses holistically, right? Not just the CVEs or vulnerabilities, be it misconfigurations on the cloud, in your on-premise IT, your privileges in your identities and entitlements on the cloud, and remediation, plugging the risk, right? That's the gap right now. Bringing it all of this end to end for an enterprise IT, that's Sena platform. So the first pillar of Sena platform is our CVEM, continuous vulnerability and exposure management for your enterprise IT. In CVM, we bring in asset exposure and asset discovery, continuous through a combination of agent-based and agentless scanner to discover IT and OT assets for an enterprise across cloud and enterprise IT. Assess for weaknesses holistically, any types of weaknesses, right? Not just CVEs, any unmanaged, unauthorized asset, any misconfiguration, any patch that is not applied within the defined SLA, all of them are vulnerability in a larger term, right? Then, as we discussed, contextually prioritizing these vulnerabilities and also remediating that, bringing down your mean time to remediate. That's our CVM. It's an integrated asset discovery, vulnerability, and patch and remediation capability. We extend the same philosophy to cloud. Today, when we talk about cloud, again, there are a lot of platforms that finds weaknesses, finds risks in cloud, right? Fixing and remediation, that's the topic today is again a biggest challenge in enterprises. Customers end up writing their own scripts to fix misconfiguration, fix vulnerability. So we're bringing together cloud asset discovery, cloud security posture management, your identities and entitlement management, workload management, and an integrated remediation, right? Contextual prioritization and remediation within the platform to help enterprises close the risk. That's Sena platform. We're bringing these services through Inspira to global enterprises. Now, Dominic, I want to hear from you, right? The real power of automation, what value automation can bring in to the whole use case we're talking about.
So, firstly, I would like to say that one point which you explained in terms of the Sena platform,
Mm.
If we are, if I'm a customer and or as an SI helping a customer, the first expectation the customer would ask is the automation piece having a single pane of a glass
Yeah.
or a single console window, which will give
Yeah.
me an end-to-end visibility of the entire landscape which we're looking at. That's number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Second is they would also look at how much are we able to adapt ourselves to the upcoming increase in terms of you have multiple patches which keeps coming up, or multiple things which keep coming up, where you need to keep yourself updated in terms of those compliances, and see that you can be able to provide a solution which caters to that requirement, uh, you
Mm.
know uh, in an agile manner,
Yeah.
not in a in a time bound manner.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
the key thing at it. So in that context, when we explored Sena platform, and we found it quite serving the purpose of most of the customers from their pain points perspective. As I
Mm.
said, a single pane of glass is what is required, which gives you an end to end 360 yard stick in terms of the start to the end from the
Yeah.
remediation perspective,
Yeah.
in a single dashboard through the tools which and the modules which we have
Mm.
from a SecPod. I think that's apt. Second is, as I talked about, in terms of the different upcoming new patches and things like that, which keeps you need to keep yourself updated.
Mm.
The platform needs to keep yourself updated in terms of getting those vulnerabilities identified and those
Mm.
patchings or remediations done. That's more
Yeah.
important. So
Yeah.
can we do it, and how faster we can do it, because each minute or each second counts in terms of
Mm.
the hacking perspective or the vulnerability perspective. So that's how it happens, and that in that context, I think this is pretty much required, and it also serves the requirement. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
understood. Great, Dominic. I think I'd like to add one more point that you rightly mentioned, right? Unified dashboard. See, right now, if the enterprises are unable to discover all different types of assets in one place, if I can't see my entire infrastructure in one place, then I can't find weaknesses of my entire infrastructure in one place, right? I
correct.
can't remediate them in one place.
Correct.
So the unified visibility is very critical, right? You need to be able to see them all in one place, so you complete the complete life cycle in one place. That's beautiful, right? We are also talking about, we mentioned BFSA, right? Now, for any audits, for any complaints reason, this becomes foundational, right? Do I have my entire infrastructure in one place, and am I able to become compliant, track compliance and track governance and beat reporting? All of them, the foundation is your unified visibility, right? Now, the other thing, Dominic, what are some of the real results and measurable benefits of the platform, the framework that we spoke about, right? The prevention-centric approach we're speaking about.
So, see, when you're talking about benefits, there were examples which I can cite about, where
Mm.
a customer from a patch deployment cycle, okay,
Mm. Mm.
had at least around 3 months, okay,
Mm.
because they had to deploy the patch in their UAT environment,
Mm.
then their DR environment, then their production environment for
Mm.
any vulnerability. I'm just giving an example of patch here. I'm not talking
Yeah.
on misconfigurations,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's much, but the cycle which it adapts, okay, because it cannot directly be deployed into the production systems. It has to go within these three different aspects. That itself, and if it's a BFSI customer, again, I'm giving an example of BFSI because they have a very finite time window to apply changes. They cannot do it. You don't have the access for doing these changes for the full month. It has certain space, because the end of the month and the start of the month are those things where they have their regular
Yeah.
processes running. So you have very few. So it is always the second and the third,
Mm.
the which actually happen, which actually the work happens. Now in that period, if you have these different offshore, you have UAT, you have a DR, you have a standby, you have a production. Just imagine the amount of time required to actually adopt into the production before getting the results.
Mm. Mm.
It's time. It's fine. It's finite time. So now, if I have a solution which will help me to identify the results of it faster
Mm.
within the period, I can then straight away go to the production with a UAT or a DR.
Yeah.
Okay, within the time frame, and I can still save my time compared to the amount. So
Mm.
obviously, the benefits there would be faster for that
Mm.
perspective. So if I have certain solutions which will again give me a continuous update of the on the various vulnerabilities which keep coming up in the
Mm.
and gets updated proactively to identify, that's also a benefit which I see or the customers see in terms of identification or providing a value to the solution. Okay,
Yeah.
so like as I said, this from a SecPod perspective, the way it gets updated,
Mm.
okay,
Mm.
it's less than 24 hours is what I see. Correct?
Mm. Mm. Correct. Yeah.
If it is connected and if it is real time, then that's how it is basis on the frequency, pooling frequency from the the on-site to the
Mm.
cloud.
Mm.
So
Mm.
all those things matter, and that
Yeah.
helps to shorten the SLA of the
Yes.
customers, and that's
Yeah.
very critical because when we're talking about now I'm actually coming to the actual point, which is the SLA,
Mm.
because all things impact the SLA. And if we talk about SLAs which are 30 minutes or 1 day, depends on how it is configured,
Mm.
we're not able to execute it. But
Mm.
customers do want, and SIs have a problem in delivering these SLAs because the tools which are deployed for getting this information from a managed services perspective is not able to justify that SLA. So either they get
Yeah.
breached and they have to deviate, or they have to take it as a known risk and move ahead.
Mm.
But to solutions now,
Yeah.
like Netpod, we can adhere to that SLAs, and that's very important in terms of
Yeah.
getting the real results. Okay, so shortened path SLAs, compliance, and that definitely helps in improving the cost efficiency
Yeah.
from a total cost of ownership perspective.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely,
that's
Dominic. Yes. Great. So we are talking about improved security efficiency, right? Meeting SLA and at lower cost.
correct.
That's right. That's a killer combination. Okay. Perfect, Dominic. I think it was a quick, crisp, short discussion, but I hope it was valuable to everybody. I think as we wrap up, we want to leave a very simple thought: prevention is not better, right? Continuous automated cyber hygiene is not just better; it's the only way to make it work. For a modern enterprise that's boundaryless, that's scaling across your enterprise IT on-prem and cloud, ever-growing attack surface, an automated, continuous remediation, unified visibility, and prioritization as remediation is very critical. I think together with Inspira, we are helping enterprises globally, right, simplify their defenses, modernize their entire vulnerability management and remediation cycles across scale with Inspira. So thank you all for joining us today, for being a part of this conversation with us. We'll open to Q&A. So I think please post your questions in the chat. Dominic and I will take it. Yes, so that is one question, Dominic. Let me read it to you. Yeah. What are some of the best practices for unifying endpoint cloud vulnerability data into single actionable view? Your take, Dominic? I can read it again to you. What are some of the best practices for unifying endpoint and cloud vulnerability data into a single actionable view?
Okay. So let me just one sec.
Yeah.
So, best practices perspective, if you see, okay, as I said, we basically need to define a cycle in terms of doing configuration changes as well as the patches. Okay,
Mm.
prior to that, if you have the tool which gives you the visibility,
Mm.
the frequency. can be defined. As I gave you an example, that one of my customers, we have a monthly governance compliance schedule which talks about the patching and things like that. The reason is because the tools which are there are not so efficient, which provides you that information, as well as the tools, the environment itself is also despaired. You have multiple different OEMs providing the different solutions. That's another concern.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you have a solution which will give you that view in a single pane of glass across with a single OEM solution, it will help you in terms of getting the patching done faster, identification and configuration changes done faster. So for me, you need to have the governance in line with a periodicity defined basis on the business requirements, and then executed basis on the defined periodicity. That's what I can see from a best practice perspective. But the tools definitely should help you, enable you to do that, and give you those insights. Praveen, I think I lost you.
Yeah, had a network problem. I'm back.
Yeah. So did you hear me, or
I heard you, Dominic. Yes, I heard.
where's the questions? I can't see.
You would see on the question mark, the right side tab.
Okay.
So, team, if you have any other questions, please feel free to share it. Yeah, there are no other questions, Dominic. In that case, we'll conclude the discussion. Thank you so much, Dominic. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar with us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.